On this video we will start part 1 of the functional locations module. Part 1 is an introduction, a general introduction to what functional locations are, how they are managed in CMMS, and also we will talk about the example that we will then implement in part 2, which will be another video. Part 3, as you can see here, we'll talk about how we interact with functional locations inside CMMS and how other modules work using functional locations. So the key point about functional locations is that they are the backbone of how CMMS organizes information. This is work orders, equipment, everything is somehow connected to functional locations. Functional locations is a little bit, it might be a little bit hard to understand, but it's their positions that equipment where equipment is going to be placed. So say you have a filter, the functional location, a function or purpose for a filter is to extract impurities from a fluid. So that's a functional location, is the filter, and then you have equipment that will occupy that functional location. So as you can see here, and I think you already probably know if you've been using CMMS, you know that there is a functional location modules and a module and an equipment module. So this, as you probably have guessed, is the connection between the equipment module and the functional locations module. The equipment will fit inside functional locations. One key thing about functional locations and with any asset hierarchy is to keep it simple. So CMMS allows you to specify up to 8 levels of hierarchy for functional location. Don't go too deep. We'll see in the example what is our recommendation, and when we've worked as consultants in other projects, we have not ever gone into level 7, for example. So we'll see in the example this will become more clear. So it helps to think when you specify the hierarchy that you are explaining a fault on an equipment to somebody that is not very familiar with the with your setup. So say if you had a fault on an electric motor on one of the machines in the production line, you'd say, okay, so you see in building A on production line 1, the cooling system of machine A, the pump for that cooling system has a problem. So this, what I've just said, building A, production line 1, machine A, cooling system, pump, is the definition of hierarchy of that you would use to specify a functional location. A functional location requires only 2, it has more options, but requires only 2 required, let's say, 2 mandatory fields. One is the code, which has a maximum of 5 characters, and the other one is the description. So this, the code, is what shows up in most of the interaction, of immediate interaction with the user in CMMS. So think about that, and within this limitation, make the code as meaningful as possible. So for example, a pump would be PP, a filter would be FL. So you know, and make it consistent. If you require, then when you're on the system, there is another way to know what the code means, because usually you can hover your mouse over or a mouse pointer over a functional location code, and it will show the description, the full description. But it is a 2-step process, so if you can keep consistent with your code, you'll have no problems and you'll always know what the systems are. So you can input functional locations one by one. Take a while as later improvements in the system, or most likely, especially in the beginning, you will be inputting multiple functional locations in one go by uploading a file. There's a wizard in the system that will allow you to do this, and we'll take a look at it in part 2 when we implement the example. The most important thing is design before system input. design before system input, so that you don't make any mistakes and create more trouble than you'd need. Because if you specify a functional location hierarchy today that is perhaps not the best, it's not the end of the world. You can revise it later, but the truth is that then the work orders, the equipment will be linked to an old structure that is not optimized. And of course there's always going to be room for improvement, but a well thought system in the beginning will save you work later. So design before system input. One way to do it is how we've specified the example that we're going to use in part 2. So I've already mentioned the functional location levels, and as you can see here, we will not go lower than level 4, even though we have down until level 7 to specify a functional location. We will not go as low as that. So we will start with plant. All the systems, even a blank installation, starts with plant. We call it plant A. You can always edit that. Then in this example, we split systems sections that we, as a maintenance, this hypothetical maintenance department needs to take care, and we say, okay, we need to take care of the building, we need to take care of machinery and production machinery and other items. So as an example, on level 1, as you can see here, under building, which would be level 0, so under this level 0 we would have HVAC, offices and others. So offices would have office 1 and office 2 on level 2, which we have not specified in here, and we will not implement that on our example. HVAC would have electrical systems, mechanical systems, whatever on level 2. Because it's more standard, we've actually decided to go on to the machinery. I think this will more people will be will find that this example and this breakdown on the machinery side is more applicable to their cases. So in this case we have a machinery, as I've said before, on level 0, followed by production line 1 and production line 2 on level 1. Then we'll only do one side of this branch, but you can imagine that production line 2 is similar to production line 1, so what we are going to learn with the specification of what happens on production line 1 is similar for production line 2 and 3 and 4, whatever. So we'd have a machine A and a machine B, the same. Machine A would split into system A, cooling system for example, system B and system C, which we are now already on level 3, and then you'd probably would like to end up on a specification of components under these systems. So under this, what I've said, this could be the cooling system. You'd have cooling pump 1, cooling pump filter, so that would show up as components on level 4, and you would end on level 4 for any on level 4 or above for any of these branches. So as I mentioned before, this is the example we are going to implement in part 2. So we'll go now to CMMS and we will see how the several pages that have to do with functional locations look, and to access the functional locations browser as we are in here right now, this is basically the entrance to the hierarchy, the functional location hierarchy. You access this by coming to assets and then clicking on the functional locations option over here. You are looking at a fresh install, so we have a plant A, and as you can see it's auto generated on registration. This is everyone, it's all of the levels, and as you can see I've started with an empty install with no functional locations defined under plant A. So that means that the options that we have, that we have in here, they still don't exist. So on part 2 of this video we will start by defining this level 0. So now what you can do on each level is you can add, in the case of plants, this is you can actually edit, because you will have only one plant. If you need more, you need to contact us to add more. This is for multi-plant organizations. You can display the information of a functional location, and you can export everything that is underneath that functional location. So this is useful because, as you can see in here, if we are doing the production line 1 and we have machine A and machine B and machine C and so on, and we would like to copy that to production line 2, what we would do is we would go to level 1 and export all the functional locations that exist underneath production line 1, and then we will upload that same structure to underneath production line 2, so you don't have to rewrite it again. You can just export it and then upload it to under this functional location using a file. We'll see this in part 2. So a display of a functional location looks like the following. So you have the possibility, okay, in this case I have some work orders that already were generated for this, but if you start with a blank installation, these are actually orders that come out of a maintenance plan. If this is a blank installation, full blank installation, you would not see any results in here yet. So you have as I said, the code and description. For a plant, we don't really have a code and description. When we go lower on the functional locations, then we would have the codes I was mentioning. We'll see all of this, and we have the description. We can set a responsible for each functional location. We can set a counter. Now the counter is important because this can trigger work orders based on maintenance plans depending on the counter readings. So this is part of a later video, part 3 of functional locations. This is a QR code that, if scanned, will take the user to this page. Now, why is this important? Because imagine that you're on the field, you see a pump, you have the QR code on the pump, you can scan it, you can come to this page, and in here you have the full history of what work is pending, what work has been done on this functional location. You can see other special properties about that pump. You can add properties about RPM, voltage, whatever property you think is reasonable or it makes sense to add onto a functional location. And remember, this is always accessible with a mobile phone or with a tablet on the field, so you can access all of this. Then when we had functional locations under plant, which in our example would be building machinery, others, this will show up in here, so you have a quick access from the parent functional location down to its children. Then you have all types of documentations, so you can add whatever you want as long as it's with this format, with these file extensions. You can add information about the functional location. So of course we're talking about when you get to the components, the pump, the motor, you can upload data sheets, some performance information, whatever it might be useful when performing work on that functional location. And then this is equipment, and I have some already in here that are going to be used on that functional location. So this is equipment that can fit that position. So I've already have some here. We will look at this later also on part 3. So the way that you edit this information, and this is a special case because this is plant, and plant actually is managed by the modules here, but all other functional locations, level 0 and below, you will click the change parameters, provided you have permissions to do so, and you can do a lot of the editing of the information on this page. But like I said, this is a plant, so plants are, as you can see in here, plants are a special functional location level. To edit parameters such as name and description, you need to go to the plant configuration module, and then you have a quick link here to allow you to do that. If this was another level on the functional location hierarchy, then all of these options would be available for you to edit. We'll see this in part 2. So this is it for the first introduction of what functional locations are, the example that we're going to set up in part 2, and what the functional location details page and functional locations browser pages look like. The next step the example, implementation of the example. This will be available on the next video. Thank you very much.